Hello, everybody. This is Elisha Keating from WisdomSeekers.net, and it's today Connect with Wisdom Seekers. What it's about is we're going to highlight individual and, in this case, group readers to let you know who we are and how we work. But we're also going to do a little bit of education at the same time. We will not be taking questions except on what we're talking about. So today, what we're going to start out with is how do we individually connect to the energies, and how is it that we because everybody interacts and acts differently with each other, with the energies, and we all have individual talents. For instance, Maria, she's extremely good with people. She's wonderful with people. Sogo has a natural talent for channeling and is very quick and sees things very quickly. And Spirit, she sees from the heart. And and if you've ever read one of her aura drawings or things like that, she's totally amazing. They're all totally amazing, is what I'm trying to say. So tomorrow, Mama B, I will do an interactive tomorrow. So basically, we're going to start out with. I'm going to put spirit feather on and say, how do you connect with energy? It's in your
So,
name, actually, spirit feather.
yes. So for me, it's like a constant evolution throughout my life, but how I connect is through the heart and feeling. And how this can manifest for me personally is I can see energy, I can see imagery, I can also have dreams. I can feel what the other person is feeling. So if there is like a pain going on in their knee or their back, I'll feel it. It becomes mirrored back to me. And it also depends on what type of reading I'm doing, but my intuition is very much feeling based for me.
So yesterday you tuned into my dog, who's kind of getting to a little old, and you felt very quickly what he felt,
Mhm.
and you described him very accurately. And this is all comes from your feeling base.
Yes, and especially with animals, it's different. At least for me, because it's all different for all of us. Animals do not communicate through voice for me. They communicate through feeling, and feeling comes through the heart. So I can feel if they're not feeling well. I can also see if there's any spots on the body that are darkened. Um, but mainly with animals, it is feeling.
Okay. And so, Maria, what about you?
Um, Kind of similar feeling too. I guess the it depends on the situation. Mostly feeling to draw my attention, and then sometimes I do see things. Well, most of the time, and I hear things too that grab my attention to connect to what I need to connect at the time. But I do when I am next to somebody, but I think that's most people pick up how somebody feels, even though they don't know they're doing it. You can pick up somebody's being sad or happy or cranky or um, but I do get the physical pain in the beginning, or when not in the beginning because I always had it. I still don't remember, but when I started, like, I guess turning it back on, or be like, okay, accepting it, letting it flow, it was kind of overpowering. The like if somebody was in pain, I would feel it very intensely, even more intensely than they did. So now I kind of learned to kind of tone it down. Like I would get for example, if somebody had like a leg pain or arm pain or stomach pain or something like that, I would feel it, but it won't be uh, so intense where I'm like, oh my goodness. Because I used to, a couple years ago, I used to walk by somebody at work and I'm like, what is wrong with your arm? They're like, how do you know my arm is hurting? It's killing me. I don't know what I did. I was like, and I would just start to send energy to it because it was so uncomfortable for me, which sounds horrible. I'm like, okay, let's fix this because I cannot. Or, like, oh, my head is killing me. What is wrong with your head? They're like, I have a headache. I have a migraine since, 2 days now, and I don't know. I'm like, okay, let's fix it. So it's not that intense anymore, but I hope I'm answering the question. That's how I connect. Yeah.
What about you, Sogo?
I find it fascinating what everybody else was saying, because I think what I'm hearing is most everybody that's connected is an empath, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think before I really kind of believed that I was receiving messages, I always felt overwhelmed being in crowds. Or if I was not overwhelmed initially there, after, like, upon leaving, I'd be just coming home and just feeling so much buzzing, like just buzzing with everybody's energy that I had picked up like a sponge. So
what's it like for you living in a city then?
I don't like it. I think this is why I prefer Texas over Vancouver, because Vancouver is just densely packed with people.
I know when I go over the Coke and down Coquihalla, it's because I live in the interior of BC. But when I go down over the Coke and I hit the wall, I just get, oh my God, let me go home.
Well, the matrix is heavy, right? In heavily populated areas. I'm with you. It's hard.
Chilliwack. When I hit Chilliwack, I just, okay, I'm going to go.
Yeah. I think initially, like as Maria was talking about, one of the people that I really looked up to when I was first awakening, and she was highly intuitive and highly psychic, constantly would have kind of like when Maria was describing, she also worked in a healthcare setting and would have debilitating pain like every day because she was coming across really sick people that had debilitating pain. Mm-hmm. So I was like, no, thank you. I don't want that. So I think somewhere within my psyche, I set an intention not to receive physical pain. So when I do Reiki or any type of energetic work or tapping in for information, I have, so to speak, like set parameters not to receive pain directly, because how I look at it is this reality is a virtual reality. So anything you don't want to experience, you can exclude from your experience. And so I have yet to really hone in on figuring out how not to take on emotions. I don't think I've set really strong parameters on that, because I still absorb everybody's like emotions and thoughts like a sponge. Well, when it comes to physical pain, I seem to have no problem. So I imagine it as scanning the body either in my mind, or sometimes I'll pretend the person is like laying in front of me and I'll like lay my hand over their body. And depending on where I feel any slight changes in the energy, whether it be through buzzing or heat or anything like that, then I know, okay, this is where the body needs attention, right? But to get more information, I just ask. And I love how we were just talking about this. I love how Thomas Campbell describes it. It's like, I don't know if he necessarily put it in these words, but it's like going to Google and putting in a search word, right? So when you're connecting to source, connecting to your intuition, you are connecting to a ever expanding data source. So you kind of need to pose a question. I feel like if you just leave yourself open, you're just constantly getting the most random things, and it can be disturbing. You could be going about your day driving, and all of a sudden, you're parked in a traffic light next to cars, and then you pick up on people's thoughts. Or like Maria and I were walking one day, and we like noticed a cop car parked somewhere, and we both felt some type of way, like really disturbed, and was getting information. We're like, you know what, we don't want that. So I think setting parameters is important, and setting.
How do you set parameters?
Yeah, and I was going to speak on that, is putting intentions that, hey, I'd like to not pick up on information other than XYZ today. And, one of the things I've learned is right before going to sleep, for people who are just trying to play around with the idea of tapping into their intuition and their heart's knowing, right before going to sleep, setting the intention to either or both during sleep and upon waking up, receive messages and be open to it and pose a question and be specific. Like you can say, hey, I have this, question on my heart about XYZ person. I'd like to know, how do I, let's say it's a girlfriend and you've had a miscommunication and you'd like to speak clearly to them. You'd like to be heard. You'd like to resolve the situation. So you say, how do I move forward speaking clearly with this person and resolve our conflict? And you'd be surprised the symbology you'll get in your dreams upon waking up, what you may have an inkling to do. Since we're speaking both on personal terms and in some ways advice, personally,
that's basically what I was hoping that people
yeah,
would say. Before you go forward, Thomas Campbell or Campbell, is it CAMP or CAMB?
CAMPBELL.
Okay.
And he has tons of material on, on YouTube. At first, don't be, one thing I'll put out there is don't be alarmed by the level of sophistication he speaks at when he speaks of quantum physics. It's really intimidating at first, but once you listen to a couple of videos, you catch the drift and it starts to make sense to you. And another thing that's been helpful to me has been the Jose Silva method. There are programs on it. There are books on it. There are audio tapes. There's, all kinds of different ways you can learn about it. Essentially, it's kind of what I was describing is whether it's before you go to sleep or whether you just quiet your mind and pose a question to the universe and say, you put it in a frame of mind and say, in this framework, such and such isn't working. In this framework, I'd like it to work like this. How do I go from this framework to this framework? And then just be open to receiving data or intuition about it. And it'll be the most random things. If you just let it flow, if you just, there was a good example of a gentleman who was a therapist. And he was going over to a lady's house to help her cope with her 3 kids that were really disrespectful and unruly towards her. And she was just at her wit's end and didn't understand how to manage them anymore. So the gentleman imagined the lady with the 3 kids in one framework, being completely frustrated, not being heard, the kids just being, rowdy and naughty and all that. And in another framework, he imagined them all getting along, understanding each other, communicating well, kids behaving well, respectfully, et cetera, right? And he just kind of left it as he drove there. So he wasn't what I call efforting to figure out the answer. It kind of just, he allowed it to come from his gut or intuition, right?
So
and as he showed up,
Ho'oponopono.
Sure, yeah, most definitely. And when he did show up, he was mentioning that he, upon opening his mouth, it's like he was channeling. He was just saying things to the kids that he hadn't thought of saying to the kids, but it was just flowing. And it was the most simple things like, hey, your mother loves you. Look at her, XYZ. And it wasn't like, this phenomenal, like moving spiritual speech, but it was the right words to trigger within the kids to see their mother in a way that would trigger them to behave positively. Right. So I just find that fascinating. I think that's helpful when you're trying to imagine kind of a way for you to receive information. Because when we talk about, just be open, That's not very,
Helpful.
to 99.99% of people, it's not very, what's the word, intuitive. It's not very, you know, you know, you need to, I feel like at least some of us, I definitely do. I need some tools to kind of get me there. I need some imaginative ways of getting myself there, right? And I think these steps really help. So.
Okay. Anybody have anything to say to add on to that?
I think another tip, I guess, would be to set a foundation, be aware of, I guess, practicing with your own energy, being aware of the energy you feel within yourself is a good starting point. And you could find somebody that you're connected with as well too, to sort of bounce intuition games off of.
Yes.
It's kind of like how you and Maria, you guys pull cards for each other and stuff like that, right? So if you can have someone that you trust that you can
Yes.
start with, I think would be a really good starting point. Yeah, I think
That's
it's
a really good point.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of information out there on the different clairs. So you can find that anywhere. But one of the best clairs, the strongest clair, is simply knowing. And that takes a lot of trust on yourself, that when you get this clair and you just know this is the answer, it takes a lot of trust to accept this as the answer. So part of contacting or being in contact with yourself or your intuition is trusting yourself. I have a lady I know, and she says, my intuition is 100%. I'm never wrong, but I never follow it. And if she followed it, I'm sure she'd be a millionaire today. So trusting what you get is a really powerful tool, powerful. And what else? I know that that's something that when I'm working with people who are learning how to use their intuition, believing what they get is something they say, is it right? Did I get it? And 99% of the time they have got it. And if they're almost right, I'll say, yes, you got it, because I want them to gain the trust in themselves that they can do it. So one of the ways how I contact energy is, and I'm a big proponent of this, the quiet mind. If you can have a quiet mind, then you can hear what the universe has to say to you, or what your intuition has to say to you. So when I choose to talk or go in and pick up energy, I first quiet my mind and quiet myself. And which is easy. You just take a deep breath and center your energy, and then you start listening. And that's literally what I do. It's like when you're going to talk to somebody in front of you or on the phone, you stop and you listen. And that's what I do. I stop and I listen. And then and if I have a name or a place, I'll call the name, because truthfully, and I've said this often, names have power. So for instance, if I wanted to talk to Sogo, I'd call myself, I'd listen, then I'd say, Sogo, what's happening? And then she'll either tell me to, yeah, I'm not talking to you right now, or she give me some answers. But again, that's listening. You have to stop and listen. And it's not much difference from having a face-to-face conversation or a telephone conversation. It's very different from messaging, though. So does anybody else do something like that, Maria?
Yes. It is. It's just, so I do, like Sogo said, I do try to say, okay, I need messages that come in. If I can't do anything about it, I don't want to know. You know what I mean? Because I used to get messages for and then there used to be some of them were pretty upsetting. So like I will drive or walk by somebody, I'm like, I can't do nothing about this. Why am I hearing of this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I would do that. But yeah, so another big thing for me was when I first started, like exploring, or, like, okay, I can do that. Do this. I'm gonna let it come in. I try to do it like other people, and that's a big thing. I used to be like, okay, I'm not doing this right. I have to do it how so and so is doing it, otherwise I'm not doing it correctly, and that's not true. You need to follow your intuition, because you already know how to receive messages. I thought it had to be like a certain way. So, or when I did send energy or energy healing, I thought it had to be a certain way. And then when I let go of that and I trusted in myself, I would do things that I'm like, then I will look it up later. And obviously, I would find that it was in different type of, you know, books and stuff like that. And I never read them, but I feel knowledge that you have from before. And it works out like, okay, I'm like, we'll read something and it will make sense, but then I'll read something else and that will make sense too. And I'm like, how does everything make sense? Because, for me, I feel like I have knowledge, and, or you can tap into like different type of, I guess, knowledge, like agent knowledge. So like I would be drawn to herbs, but then I would be drawn to something like totally different, like the stars, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like they say, like you have to be like, you're usually like earth energy or your star energy. You can't be both. I'm like, I get receive messages or drawn energy from a lot of different things. And I used to be like, okay, I feel like I'm doing something wrong, because people told me you can't do that, which I can. So
But most people can with they haven't put their blocks on their thinking.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So so when I started, because I can hear, see, and I have dreams since I remember, so long as I remember. But when I finally like, okay, around 2015, 16, I'm like, okay, I'm obviously, let me see what this goes, because of course, because of my bringing that was evil stuff, I was seeing was evil, so once I started opening up, I got drawn to energy healing, and the first, of course, energy healing was Reiki, which is a lot of different ones. And I was trying to do it the certain way that the person that I met was doing it, even though they never told me, hey, do it this way. But I was really hard on myself, and I was actually blocking myself from learning and moving forward, So it was months and months of like, I'm doing this wrong. I'm not feeling the way they're feeling, or I'm not doing the same thing, so I'm not doing this right. And once I stopped thinking that, then I did my own thing. I will do like things with my hands, and then she's like, okay, how did you know how to do this? Like, I don't know. She's like, this is an advanced Reiki symbol, which I didn't know. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. I already knew it. I just wasn't allowing myself to move forward and do it, because I was like, I need to do it the way they're doing it, because they're the I guess they're more advanced than I am. They're the master, you know what I mean? Which is not, of course, always be open to learn, but yeah, just don't feel like there's one particular way of doing things, because it's not. That's my
Yeah, exactly.
Thing.
For every single psychic or spiritual healer or teacher, there's a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say we're a little bit like X-Men, right? We all got our own way of doing things.
Yeah.
But then I think
people ask me to find things. I am not a finder. I cannot find.
But I bet you if somebody asked us to help them find something, and let's say the four of us or whoever from Wisdom Seekers was available got together and we all tapped in, we all would receive a piece of information that combined would like that help find that item, right? And when Maria was talking, it just made me think about the multidimensionality of all of us. So when you're trying to go from like the outside or from the inside this physical vessel out, right? It's kind of how do I put it? Like believing that we do live in a virtual reality, and it's no longer a concept. It's it's been shown by the double slit experiment, right? That it's true. So if you
real.
it just sure feels very real because we've created these and don't get me wrong, there's a rule set that gravity and everything else is real, right? Free will is real for this part of the rule set of the game.
But
But
the trick is, if we choose and believe it strong enough, we can break those rules.
and this is what I was going to say, is everything else is like created rules, right? So if you if you can convince yourself of that, then you can truly change it. When it comes to intuition, I'll often say, I have Sogel's filter. Maria has Maria's filter, Spirit Feather has Spirit's Feather's filter, so on and so forth, right? So if we get connected to the source, the data source, or to bring in information through this avatar in this virtual reality, the physical, so to speak, vessel of ourselves, and then it gets filtered through our mind, our speech, the words I use are different than Spirit Feathers, and so on and so forth. So if I'm getting messages for myself, well, that's very easy to say, I don't need to set parameters. I could just say, well, I'd like to know XYZ information about this topic. But if I'm trying to get a message for, let's say, Maria, it would sure help if I say, I'd like to receive information that's specific in a way that Maria would understand. So sometimes I'll say things during when we've done our lives interactives, I'll say, I'm not quite sure this makes sense to me, but I bet you it'll make sense to XYZ person. And sometimes I think we've had feedback that, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I have no idea what I'm talking about because it makes no sense to me. It's gibberish to me, but it makes sense to that person because it's in their language. It's in their way of understanding the world. It's in their way of conditioning of the language that they've learned, right? So I think to be aware that we all have our filter, that's language, that's understanding, that's our brain pathways of connecting a meaning, all of that is really helpful. We can hear the same thing but interpret two different things. So if you're tapping into information for other people, I think it serves to let go of your idea of what sounds good or what's
additional openness.
Yes. So like, I may be like, oh my God, this sounds like I have no idea. Like, I'm not going to say this to Elijah because I have no idea if this is true. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to say it because this might make sense to her. But it's because of those parameters you set forth, right? That I'd like to receive a message for Elijah. Therefore, it comes in a way that's meaningful to her. And if you filter it in any type of way by your own judgment, by your own analytical mind, then you distort the authenticity of the message, I feel.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask Spirit. Spirit has a very strong connection with the Sibyls. And most people don't know what the Sibyls are, I'm sure, but they were back in Greek and Roman times, they were seers. And and the one Sibyl it's actually extremely famous for writing out the whole history up to now and being extremely accurate, more accurate than what's that Dutch seer?
Sure.
Pardon?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
That's seer.
but how do you pull that specific energy in? Because not everybody's going to have that energy, but pulling it in is going to be a different form of communicating.
It is, and it's only been triggered within the last few months for me. It is a sense of remembering myself in a way. It's remembering that energy and pulling it in. It was, gosh, it's so hard to explain. It's just a sense of knowing, like we talked about the Claire, of just knowing. But I also have a team of guides that I connect to as well to pull in information. So there's a group of guides who they call themselves the Ones, who are connected to this energy, and I connect with them, and it comes in through my entire being at my core, not just my crown, but into the center of my being, and I can feel it. It's like a sense of warmth and almost like stepping into a different layer of awareness and consciousness. Like it's just, I almost can't think, I just do. And it sounds very Yoda, but it's true. It's like I just step into it and I allow and I let go, and it just flows. And it's pretty neat.
So basically what you're saying, I'm sorry, I'm just answering somebody, is that you do what Sogo just suggested and step back from yourself. And that's the one thing none of us mentioned, is guides. And guides are huge help for when we learn to talk to our guides. They are a huge help in helping us connect to the energies.
And there's also non-human guides too, like dragons.
Yeah, so that's another thing. Be open to anything happening.
And I guess another tip I could give for me when I was starting off is you can, like Sogo said, program your dreams at night to kind of connect with your guides and sort of start there, because when you are in the sleep state, your mind doesn't have the tendency, the ego doesn't have the tendency to take over and control and doubt. It's just, you're in that 5D state. So you can plan out to connect with your guides in your dreams and have a book beside your bed and write out what you dreamt that night. And it may not make sense at the time, but I've noticed in my dream journal that there tends to be patterns. Like I keep dreaming about being in the military, which relates to wisdom seekers. So if people have a hard time, I know.
It's not like the military here, but it makes sense to you.
Yeah, because it's the messages, it's different for everybody. So my guides implemented what would make sense to me.
Exactly. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So if that's a good way, I think, for people to start, because it prevents that whole mind takeover.
You know, there's a good example. Abraham Hicks talks about how they were talking in a room full of people, or they were channeling in a room full of people. Esther was channeling Abraham. And they posed the question of Abraham to show himself to the audience. And then they just pulled random people from the audience to describe what they saw or felt. And each person saw something different. So somebody saw butterflies, somebody else saw a bunch of sparks, somebody saw the room fill up with hearts. And there was just all kinds of different, interpretation. And the whole point of the exercise was to show that we all have our filter of understanding love, because true source data, information, intuition is love. And a level beyond that, if you get to a point where you become love, is enlightenment, right? So they were basically trying to say, this is how you guys understand love. Somebody saw an angel appear, somebody saw Jesus. Like everybody interprets love differently, or, so that's what people were tapping into. So like Spirit saying she feels warmth in her heart, may be a completely different thing. It would be the same frequency, same feeling. But for me, maybe warmth in my heart signifies heartburn, for example. I don't know, like something random, I'm just saying. But, so I may not tap into that. For me, it might be, I don't know, like being wrapped by a hug, So I think when it comes to receiving information, for each person, like truly believing that it'll be different, it'll be tailored to you in a way you understand the world and interact with it and have been conditioned to receive information is really crucial. And also, the more you want to open up has everything to do with how you open up. I remember I used to be afraid of seeing things, and I would say, oh, I don't want to see nothing, or I don't want to hear nothing. So then I would just have a knowing. Then I became more comfortable with hearing. Then I became a little bit more comfortable with seeing. I'm not quite there yet. But you know what I'm saying? So like it has everything to do with how many layers of your ego, fear-based beliefs are you peeling at the moment. The more you peel away at your fears, the a bigger your scope of receiving information in different various ways of your choosing. That makes sense. So yeah.
I also find over time, and I can only speak for me, is that my intuition has gone through evolution, different increments, different. So that is kind of ties in with the not judging what we receive, right? Because it's always changing. Energy is not linear. It's always kind of doing its thing. So
Yeah.
I have to say, I've been doing intuition work for probably over 50 years, and I have definitely evolved. And each time I evolve, I kind of feel like, how could I have read before? This is so much better.
Right.
But I know, this is just an aside, I know when I was young, people would say, my friends would say, do you know this guy? And I say, was he blonde, blue-eyed, about six feet tall? They say, yeah. I said, yeah, I never met him. And they were not impressed with me. Anyhow, I think that was a funny story, but
I think we're all a little, I'm a little dazed right now. So it's not you, it's me.
Actually, I think we've done a fabulous job.
well, there's a lot of energy going on. It's like,
And we were only supposed to be on for like 40 minutes. So I think we're about 45 minutes. So unless people have some last minute words, let's just call it. And we will probably be on in about 2 weeks again, doing not necessarily this, but maybe having Sogo on or Spirit on or somebody else on to not do interactives. We keep the interactives separate, but to tell a bit about how we grow and how we do things. Like, for instance, I'd love Maria to come on and explain how she works with candles. And I'd love Sogo to come on and explain how she actively works at channeling. And Spirit, how she works with and sees colors. So we're going to keep on doing these things. Hopefully we will be educational along the way, and you get to know each of us individually. So I'm horrible at saying goodbye, and so please, somebody save me and say goodbye.
Mom, get off the phone.
can always count on Elle.
Just make a meme for Al saying
We should. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell it to the gypsies. Don't worry.
You keep saying that.
That's hilarious. And since we're on the topic of intuition, maybe I'll just say this and it'll be a good ending. I don't know. Hopefully it'll be a ending. But I was going to say, like, when I was first just like really skeptical and was trying to open up, one of the things I did is I said, you know, I asked my guides, believing, you know, trying to grapple with the idea whether they exist or not, right? And I was like, tell me to do something and I will do it, no matter how silly, how awkward, how weird, how good, whatever it may be. And to prove to me that you're there, right? Which is a silly idea. I mean, you know, people don't have to do this exact thing. Everybody can find their own funky, fun way of interacting with their guides. And then I was told something that, I mean, it was the most bizarre thing for me to go ahead and do, let's just say, short of telling you the whole story. And I was just like, you know what, threw my hands up in the air and I said, you know what, I put myself up to this, so I'm going to go do it. And when I did, I was just astounded. It's probably one of the most like remarkable, like kind of like out there, unbelievable stories of my life. And then after that, I was hooked. I was like, okay, I'm listening. Just because, so, you know, give yourself, like, if you need proof, if you're like me, if you need proof, if you can't initially trust yourself, then just like play with them. The universe wants to play with you. They'll, you know, give you experiences that are fun. So just kind of put yourself out there and have fun.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I, on the other hand, am dyslexic, and I've always thought differently. So for me, it was just, I don't know where thinking and other reality come in together and join. I do now, but when I was young, I couldn't tell the difference. So I don't remember ever not being this way. And I do believe dyslexia gives me a boost
Yeah.
because we never learned to think in the box. We always thought out of the box. But I love your story. And if you try that, just say with ease and grace as well.
Yes. And I was going to say, I think a lot of diagnoses are, while you may have valid symptoms and, you know, ways that it maybe limits your interaction in the world. I don't know what your experience is, but I'm just saying any type of diagnoses, right? I think people that are dyslexic, that are autistic, of that kind of diagnoses are oftentimes, and it's a broad topic, but it could be very well misdiagnosed, but they also didn't believe in the story of the Matrix. And I love that.
I honestly think that the people that are coming in autistic or dyslexic.
Yeah, and hence there's way more, right? Because they just don't want to live by those rules. They don't want to live by the stupid programming ways that we've created the chaos for ourselves.
Yeah.
So,
for instance, I know I came in to help the earth do what it's doing right now. Why I chose to come in 70 years early, I have no idea. But I honestly believe that's why I'm here. And but I didn't actually get a diagnosis. Not that diagnosis.
But see, you know, some of the people who have experienced the world from a theoretical viewpoint, very analytical, very radical thinkers. Again, like Thomas Campbell, I just love using him as an example, because while he can operate very well in this world, when he gives talks and speeches and any type of YouTube material that he, you know, delivers messages, if you look at him, he almost has a glaze over his eyes, and he's very monotone, and he barely moves or blinks. And he was himself explaining why. And the reason he gave was, he said, I do believe in my multidimensionality. And most of the time, before coming on, I intend to deliver messages in such a way that my audience would receive, because that's the purpose of it anyway, because I have this knowledge for myself anyway, but I want to, you know, I want to share it. So I want it to be shared in a way that'll be received well. So he would say that I am only 30% here. And so people would be like, well, what are you, the other 70%? And he would say, I am merged with my other my other selves in other dimensions, and where I pull information from. And if it doesn't serve me well, then for my body to, what did he say? Expend energy to blink, to move, to be animated. I'm just here to deliver a message. But I mean, it's a very measurable way, right? For him to conserve energy, so to speak, and deliver messages clearly.
Pulling energy in from other dimensions. And I do that too. You're so busy listening and everything.
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't really have time to be animated. And I'm very animated when I speak, so you can tell when I'm not, when I'm actually channeling. But unless Maria or Spirit have something to say, or we should call it quits so that everybody can do things before
Sounds good.
you're done. Spirit's done. Sogo. And I love what everybody has to say. Thank you so very much, all four of us.
Thank
really
you for
fun.
having us.
And I'd put up Thomas Campbell's name and the name of my big toe in the comments. So if you want it, when people go back, you can find it written there. So you can go look him up. I think that is somebody worthwhile looking up. All right. So as I say, I'm really bad at goodbye. So either say it now or get out. Namaste. Namasko. And again, thank you.